Welcome back, everybody. This is Greg from Greg Reviews Sci-Fi, and today we're going to review a book called Ruins of the Galaxy by Christopher Hopper. So in full disclosure, I did receive an early review copy of Ruins of the Galaxy, and I actually read it in PDF format before it was released as a book and on Kindle. And I really liked it. As I was writing the review originally, I noticed a bunch of things change. I saw the book was re-released and had a new cover and some other things going on. And what happened is that Christopher Hopper, the author, was originally self-publishing. And after he published the book, he did get his book published by a publisher, Variant Publishing. So they re-released the book. They did add a couple of chapters to the end, change a couple of things in the front, run it through editing a couple more times, and I actually bought the book in its new form in order to read the changes. And I really enjoyed it. So what's this book about? Essentially, it follows two main characters, Lieutenant Magnus and Awen. Awen is a Luma, and her job is a dignitary for the Republic. And she's brought in to secure peace with the Jujari. Lieutenant Magnus happens to be with his squad sent to protect her and her team during this negotiation. Well, as you can imagine, this is a book, and I want to keep it spoiler-free, but things do not go as planned for Awen. And it turns into like a running, gunning, military, sci-fi, turned space opera, mixed with some space fantasy that could be sci-fi. We don't really know. And the characters kind of collect a team or a crew along the way. And it's very, very interesting. So you don't really even get to see the story arc. You don't really get to, you can't even guess the story arc until you're maybe halfway through the book, maybe a little longer. So let's get into the review. This story hooked me right off the bat. And for the authors that are watching my reviews, I'm a pretty transparent person. Action up front is what keeps me turning pages. I've read so many books that the first 3, 4, 5 chapters are this massive world building, or even weak world building, or character building, or a super long prologue, or whatever the case might be. In this case, right up front, we have action. We have Awen landing on the Jujari planet, and we have Lieutenant Magnus trying to figure out how to keep her safe. It's tension right away. The two butt heads, and there's really kind of funny dialogue. There's a pecking order that's being established. And right away, chapter 1, I'm thinking, man, this story is really interesting. Now, the interesting thing about the story is that you can't really discern the story arc right away. And I don't know if I ever really picked out the story arc in this book, because it changes so much. It changes from running and gunning to being in spaceship to discovery of things to what I'll call space fantasy back to political intrigue. And what I'm guessing is that this series, which is the book 1 in the Ruins of the Galaxy series, this series is going to have a lot of all of those things together. And Hopper basically wanted to give us a taste of those things in book 1 without really focusing the entire story around book 1. And because of the way the story's written, we don't really get to see the antagonist or the villain until about halfway through. You really get to see the result of the antagonist's influence in the story early, but you don't really know what's going on. And the antagonist doesn't make themselves visible until at least halfway, maybe even longer. And then starts to play a central role in the book. I thought the story was really great. I think it was it had a lot of sci-fi tropes in it, and they were well done, but it was a lot. So it was so different that if you're reading the second half of the book, there's no possible way that if you read the first half of the book and the second half of the book separate, would you be able to describe the same story to someone else? So for that, I gave it 4 stars. The story is really great. It kept me interested. I think you, my listener, reader, watcher, whatever, will really enjoy it. But it is a lot of setup for future books. So on to characters. The character building was really excellent. I gave it 4.5 stars. I mean, the 2 primary characters are Lieutenant Magnus and Awen du Luthlinium, if that's how you even pronounce it. Essentially, these are the 2 primary characters. And as those characters are built out, Hopper essentially has them collect additional characters that become very critical to the book. For example, Ezo and TO-96. Now, both Magnus and Awen interact with these 2 characters, but they really kind of become part of Awen's team as the book goes on. And as Lieutenant Magnus kind of fulfills his story arc, he runs across Piper and Piper's parents, which you will see in the book are very, very critical. And Piper, that character alone, opens up unbelievable story arc possibilities in this series, which is why I say in the story portion that there's a lot of setting up the rest of the series and other books and things like that. So once we figure out what the deal is with Piper, I think she's going to have an entire book, or she's going to have play a main part in the next couple books. I'm not really sure. So as I said about the opening, the pace of this book is really good. I gave the pace 4 stars. This book avoids a lot of the pitfalls of book 1s, where a lot of book 1s build, cliffhanger, and they make you want to, they don't give you like a real story arc in book 1. We get a solid story arc in Ruins of the Galaxy. I think Hopper did a nice job of actually kind of buttoning up some of the things that he opened up with kind of all of the different areas. Now, they're not all closed by any means. They're not even mostly closed, but we get enough conclusions in order to say, yes, this is a solid standalone book, but it does create interest in books 2, books 3, which are, book 2 is out now by the time you're watching this video, and book 3 is probably a month or 2 away. So this is definitely a series that I think you'll enjoy. On originality, I gave this a 4 stars. It is an original story. It's nothing I've ever read before. The sci-fi tropes are very common. There's no real exploration or genre busting originality, but it is an original story, solid use of sci-fi tropes, and that's how you garner a 4 star. In order to get a 5 star in here, it has to be something no one's ever seen before. And the only really ones that get 5 stars in this category are classics. The technology, I gave 3.5 stars. If there's an area that could be improved, it is in the technology area. Sci-fi fans really love to understand some of the science behind the fi, and I I really like. I don't want to go crazy in depth. I'm not a hard sci-fi fan, really, but I do like if you're going to invent some technology, which there's not really much technology invention in Ruins of the Galaxy. It's a lot of reuse of standard sci-fi technology. It's done really well, but um, there's no. I always use this term like there's no lightsaber of Ruins of the Galaxy. There's no. That's the like whoa. That is the first time I've seen that piece of technology. Holy smokes! But the technology that is used is a solid use of sci-fi technology, kind of the same stuff you'll see in other military sci-fis. I mean, they even call the helmets buckets. I mean, some of the terminology is the same. So it will feel familiar as far as the technology, but it would be nice to dig in just a little bit further on some of the technology and kind of pay that sci-fi bill of just a little bit of science in the fiction. So in conclusion, I really enjoyed this book. I think critically, Hopper probably packed a little too much into book one. There's probably 3 books worth of story arc in this one book, but somehow he pulls it off, and the book doesn't feel lost or going in different directions all the time. Essentially, it's new thing, new story arc. Oh, new thing, new story arc. Oh, another new thing, a new story arc. And the back end story arc, the primary story arc, is kind of tagged along for the ride, so you don't really forget about it. But as an example, the Jujari, are just really mentioned in passing after the first few chapters. They talk about the war and things like that, but that entire story arc kind of rejuvenates itself at the very end. I don't want to spoil it, but that's what I mean about the main story arc kind of hiding in the little new story arcs that set up the series. So do I recommend this book? I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars, which is really great for Greg Reviews Sci-Fi. It takes a lot to get to that 4 stars. So if you look at the other books I recommend, Ringworld, I think, was 4 or 4.5 stars. So it takes a lot. And the character building in this story is really great. And a lot of the story arcs, the fact that it kept me guessing really kept it interesting. Like I said, maybe too much critically, but I really enjoyed this book. I would recommend it. It's an exceptional first work by an author. And for that, I think it's worth checking out and maybe getting into the series. Thanks again for watching this review of Ruins of the Galaxy by Christopher Hopper. If you want to buy this book, check the links in the description of this video or head over to gregreviewssci-fi.com. There's a blog post with a full in-depth review for Ruins of the Galaxy, and you can check me out on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and over on the website we also have some merch. So if you want some Greg Reviews Sci-Fi merch, check that out. Thanks again. Bye-bye.